As you know, museums are at a crossroads in this country and even beyond. I mean, if you travel to Europe, if you travel to Asia, you're finding similar problems, different to a certain degree, but that institutions, cultural institutions, museums especially, but also performing arts institutions, are starting to develop a considerable number of problems that it's going to take great creativity and great originality to solve those problems. Before I start, I just want to ask you, how many of you are members of the Hirshhorn? I have to ask that because I have a board of trustees and they always want to know how many members. But I'm just going to start this. We've got some images. We got some images for you we'd like to show you, and I think the images are going to be important. So we'll move for this. This is the Hirshhorn.
This is MFA's.
We need one click. But what I'll say about this all is I'll give you a little history here because I think context matters. And I started at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, and this will be very brief. And when I got to Los Angeles, there was no museum, there were no buildings, there was no collection, there was no money. And we started with what we called the Guerrilla Museum, and everybody misinterpreted it. They thought guerrilla with a G-O-R. And we were talking about guerrilla warfare because we were going to use public spaces, we were going to show up, do something, and then disappear, and so on. And then that morphed into the Temporary Contemporary, which we saw as an artist space. It was like the artist studio, which is something that is very important to me, and then it morphed into the building on Bunker Hill. But the critical thing at MoCA, it was that it was actually started by artists. And there was an artist committee, and they started the museum, they felt it was necessary, and it was in a city that was artist-rich and institutional poor. And so building MoCA really focused on artists, working with the creative individual, and building an institution that we felt had a major impact in terms of the arts and so on. This is actually opening night at the Hirshhorn, and I won't dwell on this at all too much, but this was the first night at the Hirshhorn, 1974, and 1972 actually. And it's in the city of Washington, D.C., which is critically important. I think location matters here. Washington, D.C. is a place, and many of the things we're doing now are really unique to Washington, D.C. and build on the strengths of Washington, D.C. And what we're going to do at the Hirshhorn is we're going to, I'll show you the next slide, actually. We're going to quick next slide. No, there's one missing. Well, oh, something's missing. But go back a bit. There was one missing. But what I was going to show you is an installation shot of the first show at the Hirshhorn Museum when it opened in 1972. If I showed you a picture of the opening installation of the permanent collection at that time, and then I showed you a picture a year ago or 2 years ago of the installation of the permanent collection at the Hirshhorn Museum, it would look about the same. And which is a very interesting thing because and I don't want to be critical of any directors, but they followed a path, and I won't mention any names, but they followed a path, and it was a rather rigid, monolithic sort of stance with regard to what the collection is and what the collection should be, and it was Eurocentric, and it really did not, no matter how many times you hear museums say they'd like their museum to be global, or it is global, or it is international, many times it's not. And the Hirshhorn people said that this is the international arm of contemporary modern art for the Smithsonian Institution, and it really never was. It never was. And so now we're entering another year, another sort of phase at the institution. And what Joseph Hirshhorn gave to the country was a gift to the nation. And that was his collection, and it was a magnificent gift, and it was done at a certain period of time. And now we think we can give another gift to the nation, but it's going to have to be a different gift that we give. Mainly because the world has changed. Selma's talked about that, and a lot of other people have. And so institutions have to be adaptable, and they have to really adjust. And so this is really our core value for the institution that we developed. And I can just give it for you. What we want to create is a more original cultural institution. And I'll conclude later with something about that. That lives by the principle, to paraphrase Marcel Proust, that creative output creative output allows us to see not only one world, our own, but to see multiple worlds, and in fact to have it at our disposal as many worlds as there are creative minds. And this is where I think museums have to go. And I think this is a critical thing for us to do. And I think that by doing this, and by making certain commitments as we move forward, as we approach the 40th anniversary of this institution, which is in 2014, we're going to try to live and celebrate this concept. Next slide. This is one of the first things we're going to do when you come to Washington very soon. As you know, museums exhibit works inside the building and the gallery walls. We're going to use the exterior walls also. But this is really about that commitment to the artist. The most important thing is to have that kind of enhanced engagement with the creative individual. And when I say creative individual, I mean not just the artist, but I mean critics, I mean writers, I mean scientists, I mean architects, and so forth. And this will open in the spring, and it's going to be a 360-degree projection that's going to spin. It's going to also go up and down. I mean, we're running into a little trouble in Washington. They think it's going to cause car accidents. And we're going to have to clear this with Homeland Security, I'm sure. But it's a 360-degree projection by Doug Aiken. And it's going to go into the permanent collection of the museum. And so this is one of the first things we're going to do, and that is that commitment to the artist. What does an artist bring to an institution? We're a contemporary museum. What they bring is authenticity. And what they bring to it also is sheer beauty. What they also bring in this piece, for example, is grandeur. And they also bring, I believe, in this project, the relationship between architecture and the works of art. And as you know, the Hirshhorn is this insular building, insular architecture. It really does say to you, don't go in, right? Or you will never get out. Next slide, please. This is the lobby of the Hirshhorn. Now, this is what this is about when you walk into most museums, and this is about a subject which is of great interest to me, and that is to curate, and I use the word curate, to curate 6 minutes. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm going to go fast. But to really curate the public spaces of the institution as a unified gesture. And we're taking up the bookstore, so the first impression is not a commercial thing. We're actually taking the lobby and turning it into a classroom of the future. So when you walk in the museum, your first experience is going to be an educational one. And we're going to be exploiting and using all the new technology. Next slide. This is Barbara Kruger. This is on the lower lobby. We are commissioning her to do not only the lower lobby, another work that we're going to the permanent collection. This is somebody who asks questions, but also makes suggestions, gives thoughts about the world we're in. And she's also designing the bookstore, and we will accession the bookstore into the permanent collection of the museum also. And the first subject is going to deal with a subject most likely on it's going to be about censorship. And as you know, at Washington, we've had a problem with censorship at the Smithsonian. And so the whole idea is here, bring in an artist, take on that subject, and deal with it, right? So that's that, and I'll move real quickly. Next slide, please. Here's the bubble, the inside of the bubble. This is the bubble. This space, I'll just give you some idea of the scale of this space. If you look at the Pantheon in Rome, it's our building, our dome is going to be 20 feet higher than that, and the volume of air, if you measure the volume of air, it's the same as in the Pantheon in Rome. So that's how big this thing is. And what this really is all about, is to create a new level of global connectivity. And this is something we have to do. All institutions are going to have to do it. And this is a way of having and creating a global conversation, bringing in the great thinkers, bringing in artists, bringing in architects to talk about subjects, everything from cultural, international cultural diplomacy, to the exhibitions we do called Art and Destruction, to how technology is driving culture, and so forth. And so this is really a project that's moving ahead, open in October 2012. Next slide, last one, and I'll be done. There it is, there this damn thing is. Now, a couple quick things. You see the bubble. Its shape is actually determined and is a metaphor for Brancusi's Sleeping Muse. Because if we put a dome on it, it would look rather dumb. And in that space, is for first person presentations, and then you see the bubble squeezing out the side. That is going to be a technical center that is going to be dealing with getting the information that happens and is discussed in the bubble around the world, going around the world, so that we can have this interactive communication with the world and bring the world together. What we're trying to create, this is the last sentence, what we're trying to create is a very agile thinking institution that hopefully, if we do it right, will be as original in its function as the work of the artists that we show or collect inside. So that's the goal.